She told the millionaire, "You are my first love," and his soul trembled before he even kissed her. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She never imagined that one perfect dish could change everything. The clock above the industrial steel counter read 11:47 p.m., and Selina Moore's hands were still trembling from the dinner rush that had ended 2 hours ago. Steam rose from the massive dishwasher in the corner of Lumiere's kitchen, Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurant, where she had spent the last 3 years perfecting every sauce, every garnish, every moment that separated amateur from artistry. At 25, Selina possessed something rare in the cutthroat world of fine dining, a natural instinct for flavors that couldn't be taught in culinary school. Her dark skin glistened with perspiration as she wiped down the granite prep station for the final time that night, her chef's whites bearing the honorable stains of another 16-hour shift. "Moore, you're still here?" Chef Laurent's thick French accent cut through the kitchen's late-night silence. The head chef, a man known for reducing grown cooks to tears, watched her with something resembling respect. "Go home. The soufflés will survive without you tonight." Selina smiled tiredly, untying her apron with practiced efficiency. "Just finishing the inventory for tomorrow's special, chef. The truffle supplier confirmed the delivery for—" "Moore." Laurent's voice softened, a rarity that made her look up. "When was the last time you went somewhere that wasn't this kitchen or your studio apartment in Queens?" The question hit deeper than intended. Selina paused, her hands stilling on the apron strings. When was the last time? She couldn't remember. Her life had become a careful routine. Subway from Astoria at dawn, 14 hours in this gleaming temple of gastronomy, subway home to collapse into bed. Repeat. "I'm fine, chef," she whispered, but her voice carried the weight of someone trying to convince herself. Laurent studied her with the same intensity he used to judge a perfectly timed risotto. "Tomorrow night, you're representing Lumiere at the Meridian Grand Hotel. Corporate dinner for some hotel magnate's business associates. They requested our signature dessert course, and I'm sending my best pastry assistant." Selina's heart jumped. The Meridian Grand. She'd walked past its towering glass facade countless times, never imagining she'd step foot inside. "Chef, I don't know if I'm ready for—" "You are." His tone brooked no argument. 7 p.m. sharp. Don't make me regret this decision." As Laurent disappeared into his office, Selina stood alone in the kitchen that had become her sanctuary and prison. Tomorrow night, she would leave her familiar world of stainless steel and controlled chaos. Tomorrow night, she would enter a realm where her carefully guarded heart might finally be tested. She gathered her knife roll, the most precious possession she owned, each blade a promise to herself that she would rise above the limitations others saw in a young black woman from Queens. The weight of the tools felt familiar in her hands, but something else stirred in her chest. Anticipation, fear, hope. The subway ride home passed in a blur of fluorescent lights and late-night commuters. In her cramped studio apartment, Selina sat on the edge of her narrow bed, still wearing her chef's whites, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. 25 years old, and she had never allowed herself to want anything beyond the next recipe, the next technique to master. Love, relationships, the messy complications that came with opening your heart. She had convinced herself that success required sacrifice, that dreams demanded everything. But tomorrow night, stepping into that gleaming hotel, she would be more than just another kitchen worker. She would be representing something bigger than herself. And maybe, just maybe, life might surprise her with something she never knew she was missing. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from her sister Keisha in Atlanta. "How's the big city treating you, sis? Still working yourself to death?" Selina's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she explain that she wasn't just working? She was building something, creating a version of herself that could stand proud, that could look back and say she had chosen purpose over comfort. "Living the dream," she typed back, adding a chef's hat emoji. But as she prepared for bed, one thought echoed in her mind, persistent as the hum of the city outside her window. Tomorrow night would change everything. She could feel it in her bones, the way she could sense when a soufflé was ready to fall, or when a sauce needed just one more minute to reach perfection. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, Selina Moore fell asleep without setting her alarm, because some nights even dreams need rest before they're ready to come true, and some encounters are worth arriving early for. Have you ever felt like Selina? So focused on your dreams that you forgot to dream about love? What would you do if fate suddenly opened a door you never expected? Some encounters are written in the stars, others are carved in steel and served on porcelain. The Meridian Grand Hotel rose from the Manhattan skyline like a monument to ambition, its glass facade reflecting the golden sunset as Selina stepped out of the yellow taxi. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she clutched her knife roll and the carefully packed dessert components that would either make or destroy her career tonight. 7 floors above, Ragnar Meridian stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his executive suite, watching the city pulse with life below. At 36, he commanded an empire of luxury hotels that stretched across 3 continents, each property a testament to his relentless pursuit of perfection. His sharp jawline and steel-gray eyes had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, but tonight those same eyes carried an exhaustion that no amount of success could cure. "Sir, the catering team has arrived for tonight's presentation," his assistant Cordelia announced from the doorway, her voice professionally neutral. Ragnar straightened his charcoal Armani suit jacket without turning around. "The dinner for the Tokyo investors?" "Yes, sir. The chef from Lumiere is setting up in the Aspen Room as we speak." For 12 years, Ragnar had built his life around predictable encounters, board meetings where everyone wanted something, galas where conversations followed scripts, business dinners where every smile had a price tag. He moved through these events like a perfectly calibrated machine, efficient and untouchable. "I'll be down in 10 minutes, he said, dismissing Cordelia with a wave. 3 floors below, Selina transformed the hotel's pristine kitchen into her temporary sanctuary. Her hands moved with practiced grace as she arranged delicate chocolate soufflés, each one a small masterpiece that would either launch her career or confirm her fears that she didn't belong in this rarefied world. "Excuse me, miss." A smooth voice interrupted her concentration. Selina looked up to find a tall, impeccably dressed black woman with kind eyes and an expensive handbag. "I'm Imara Washington, Mr. Meridian's personal event coordinator. I wanted to personally thank you for accommodating tonight's last-minute request." "It's my pleasure," Selina replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "I just hope the dessert course meets expectations." Imara smiled warmly. "If it's anything like what I'm smelling, we're in for something special. Mr. Meridian is particular about quality, but I have a good feeling about tonight." As Imara departed, Selina felt the weight of invisible eyes watching her every move. She had learned to work under pressure at Lumiere, but this felt different, more personal, more dangerous to the careful walls she had built around her heart. At exactly 8:30, Selina entered the Aspen Room carrying her signature creation, individual chocolate soufflés infused with Madagascar vanilla and topped with gold leaf. The room fell silent as she moved between tables of sharply dressed executives, each dessert placed with the precision of a surgeon. She was 3 tables from completion when she felt it, a gaze that seemed to see straight through her professional composure. Slowly, she lifted her eyes and found herself staring directly into the most intense grey eyes she had ever encountered. Ragnar Meridian sat at the head table, his untouched glass of wine forgotten in his hand. For the first time in years, something had captured his attention completely. Not the billion-dollar deal being discussed around him, not the quarterly projections or expansion plans, but the graceful young woman moving through his dining room like poetry in motion. Selina's breath caught. She had seen his photograph in business magazines, but no camera could capture the magnetic presence that filled the space around him. There was something almost predatory in the way he watched her, but not threatening, more like a hunter recognizing something rare and precious. Their eyes held for exactly 3 heartbeats. 3 heartbeats that would replay in both their minds for weeks to come. Then Selina's professional training kicked in, and she continued her circuit, placing the final soufflé before returning to the kitchen. But her hands shook as she packed her equipment, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in the universe. 20 minutes later, as she prepared to leave through the service entrance, a hotel employee approached. "Miss Moore, Mr. Meridian requests your presence in the Aspen Room." Selina's stomach dropped. Had something gone wrong with the dessert? Had she somehow offended the hotel's owner with her presence? She entered the now empty dining room to find Ragnar standing alone by the windows, his hands clasped behind his back. The city lights created a halo around his silhouette, making him appear almost ethereal despite his obvious mortality. "The soufflé was extraordinary," he said without turning around. "Thank you, sir," Selina replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Finally, he faced her, and the full intensity of his attention made her feel as if she were standing in a spotlight. "What's your name?" "Selina Moore." He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "Selina Moore. How long have you been cooking professionally?" 3 years at Lumiere, sir. But I've been cooking since I was 12. Something flickered across his features. Surprise? Interest? "And what do you want, Selina Moore?" The question caught her off guard. What did she want? Success, recognition, respect, all the things she had trained herself to desire. But standing here, under his unwavering gaze, only one truth emerged. "I want to matter," she said quietly. "I want to create something beautiful that makes people feel something they've never felt before." Ragnar's expression shifted, as if she had just answered a question he didn't know he'd been asking his entire life. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" The words escaped before he could stop them, and in that moment, both their carefully ordered worlds began to crumble. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is say yes to something your heart wants. Selina stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror of Lumiere's staff bathroom, her hands gripping the chipped porcelain sink. 24 hours had passed since Ragnar Meridian's unexpected invitation, and she still couldn't decide if she had imagined the entire encounter. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Darius, the sous chef, commented as she emerged. His dark eyes held genuine concern. In 3 years of working together, he had become her closest friend in the kitchen's brutal hierarchy. "Maybe I have," Selina murmured, tying her apron with mechanical precision. Darius studied her profile as she began prepping vegetables for the lunch service. "Want to talk about whatever happened at that fancy hotel last night?" Selina's knife paused mid-chop. How could she explain that a man she'd met for 5 minutes had somehow rearranged the furniture in her soul? That his simple question, "What do you want?" had haunted her dreams? "It was just business," she lied, but her voice carried the tremor of someone trying to convince herself. Across town, Ragnar sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at a quarterly profit report he'd read 3 times without absorbing a single number. His assistant Cordelia had already rescheduled 2 meetings, citing his unusual distraction. "Sir?" Imara Washington knocked softly on his doorframe. "The Seattle property contracts are ready for your signature." Ragnar looked up, and Imara was struck by something she'd never seen in 12 years of working for him: uncertainty. "Imara, you've been married for 15 years, he said suddenly. "Yes, sir." She entered cautiously, sensing this wasn't about business. "How did you know?" The question seemed to cost him something. "How did you know your husband was worth the risk?" Imara set the contracts on his desk, her expression softening. "May I speak freely, sir?" Ragnar nodded. "I knew because for the first time in my life, I was more afraid of losing him than I was of getting hurt." She paused. "Is this about the young chef from last night?" Ragnar's silence was answer enough. "She seemed genuine," Imara added quietly. "Not like the others who circle around you hoping to catch pieces of your fortune." At precisely 6 p.m., Selina stood outside Maria, the intimate seafood restaurant Ragnar had chosen for their dinner. She had changed clothes 4 times, finally settling on a simple black dress that Keisha had sent from Atlanta. Elegant, but not trying too hard. Her palms were damp despite the cool October evening. She had almost called to cancel 3 times, but something deeper than fear kept her moving forward. "Selina." His voice behind her was like warm honey over gravel. She turned to find Ragnar approaching from a black sedan, dressed in a navy suit that made his grey eyes appear almost silver. Without the formal hotel setting, he seemed more human, more approachable, but no less intimidating. "You came," he said simply. "I almost didn't," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. Something flickered in his expression. Relief. "I'm glad you did." The hostess led them to a corner table overlooking the Hudson River, where city lights danced on the dark water like scattered diamonds. Ragnar had clearly requested privacy. The nearest occupied table was 20 feet away. "I have to ask," Selina said after they'd ordered wine. "Why me? You could have dinner with anyone." Ragnar was quiet for a long moment, rolling his wine glass between his palms. "Do you know what it's like to have everything you thought you wanted, only to realize it means nothing?" The vulnerability in his voice made her chest tighten. "I know what it's like to want something so badly that you forget to want anything else." Their eyes met across the table, and Selina felt that same electric recognition from the hotel. "I built my first hotel when I was 24, Ragnar continued. "Lost everything I had. Slept on construction sites, ate 1 meal a day for 6 months, but I was alive, hungry for something real. And now? Now I have 37 hotels in 12 countries, and I can't remember the last time I felt hungry for anything." He paused. "Until last night." Selina's breath caught. "What happened last night?" "I watched you move through that dining room like you belonged there, like you belonged everywhere, and I realized I'd forgotten what it felt like to see something beautiful without trying to own it." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "And then you looked at me." "Ragnar, I know this is insane," he interrupted. "I know we're from different worlds. I know I have no right to ask for your time when all I can offer is complicated." Selina leaned forward, her heart racing. "What if I'm not looking for simple?" The question hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they were brave enough to cross. Their waiter appeared with appetizers, breaking the spell. As they ate, the conversation flowed easier. Selina told him about learning to cook with her grandmother in Georgia, about the scholarship that brought her to culinary school in New York. Ragnar shared stories of his early struggles, the mentor who taught him that hospitality was about creating moments people would remember forever. "I've never told anyone that story," he said, after describing his first disastrous attempt at managing a kitchen. "Why are you telling me?" Ragnar set down his fork, his gaze intense. "Because when you asked what I wanted last night, I didn't have an answer. I haven't wanted anything personal in so long that I'd forgotten how." He paused. "But sitting here with you, I remember." Selina felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "What do you remember?" "I remember what it feels like to hope for something that money can't buy." Outside, rain began to streak the windows, and the city blurred into watercolor impressions of light and shadow. And in that moment, both of them realized they were no longer just having dinner. They were falling into something that would either save them both or destroy everything they thought they knew about love. When you've guarded your heart for 25 years, letting someone in feels like learning to breathe underwater. 3 weeks had passed since their dinner at Morea, and Selina's world had shifted on its axis in ways both thrilling and terrifying. What had started as an impossible dinner invitation had become something she couldn't name. Stolen moments between her shifts, late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn, text messages that made her smile in the middle of chopping onions. "You're glowing," Darius observed, as Selina plated the evening's amuse-bouche with unusual precision. "And you've been humming." "You never hum." Selina paused, suddenly aware that she had been humming an old Stevie Wonder song her grandmother used to play while cooking Sunday dinner. "I'm just focused." "Focused on what? Or should I say on whom?" Darius raised an eyebrow. "Because whatever's happening, it's made you even better in the kitchen. Chef Laurent actually smiled when he tasted your butternut squash soup yesterday." Before Selina could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Ragnar. "Can you meet me at Bryant Park in an hour? I have something to show you." Her heart did that familiar flutter that had become as regular as breathing over the past few weeks. She typed back quickly, "My shift ends in 30 minutes, I'll be there." "And there's that smile again." Darius grinned. "Whoever he is, he's got you completely gone." Selina couldn't deny it anymore. Somewhere between their second dinner and their first real conversation about dreams, she had fallen harder than she'd ever imagined possible. Bryant Park was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon when Selina arrived, slightly breathless from rushing across town. She found Ragnar sitting on a bench near the carousel, but he wasn't alone. A little girl with curly brown hair and paint-stained fingers sat beside him, chattering animatedly about something in her sketchbook. "Uncle Ragnar, do you think the princess should have a purple dress or a blue one?" the child asked, completely absorbed in her artwork. "I think," Ragnar said solemnly, "that princesses should wear whatever color makes them feel powerful." Selina approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt the tender scene. This was a side of Ragnar she had never imagined, relaxed, playful, genuinely happy. "Purple it is," the girl declared, then looked up and noticed Selina. "Are you Uncle Ragnar's girlfriend?" "Lydia," Ragnar said quickly, his cheeks actually flushing. "This is my friend Selina. Selina, this is my niece, Lydia. She's visiting from Boston with my sister." Lydia studied Selina with the frank curiosity of a 7-year-old. "You're really pretty. Do you like to draw?" "I'm more of a cook," Selina said, sitting on the bench beside them. "But I love art. Can I see what you're working on?" For the next hour, Selina found herself completely charmed by Lydia's boundless energy and imagination. They critiqued the little girl's fairy tale illustrations, bought hot chocolate from a nearby cart, and watched street performers near the fountain. What struck Selina most was how natural Ragnar seemed with his niece. Patient, attentive, genuinely engaged in her world of make-believe and wonder. It was a stark contrast to the powerful businessman she'd first met, and it made her heart ache in ways she couldn't fully understand. "Aunt Celia is picking me up in 20 minutes, Lydia announced, checking a plastic watch covered in rainbows. "But I want to show Selina the ducks first." As Lydia ran toward the small pond, Ragnar and Selina followed at a slower pace. "She's wonderful," Selina said softly. "You're wonderful with her." Ragnar's expression grew contemplative. "My sister Celia raised me after our parents died. I was 16, she was 22 and barely keeping her head above water. But she never made me feel like a burden." He paused. "Lydia reminds me what it felt like to believe in magic." "Do you still believe in magic?" Selina asked, surprised by her own boldness. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "I'm starting to." Something in his tone made her breath catch. They had been careful over the past 3 weeks, testing the waters, sharing stories, building something that felt both precious and fragile. But this felt different, more intentional. "Selina," he began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "I know this is all happening fast. I know we're still figuring out what this is between us. But I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't casual. It isn't temporary, and it's not something I'm taking lightly." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that 3 weeks ago I thought I had my life figured out. I thought I knew what I wanted, what I needed, what was possible." He stepped closer, his grey eyes intense. "And then you walked into my dining room and everything I thought I knew became irrelevant." "Ragnar, I'm falling in love with you, Selina." The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for weeks. "I know it's too soon, I know it's complicated, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just dating or getting to know each other." Selina felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. In her entire life, no one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Ragnar was looking at her now, like she was something precious and impossible and worth every risk. "Uncle Ragnar, Selina, come see the baby ducks." Lydia's voice cut through the moment, but neither of them moved. "Say something," Ragnar whispered, his vulnerability so raw it made her chest ache. Selina reached up and touched his face gently, feeling the slight roughness of his evening stubble against her palm. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of how much I want this. Of how much I want you." Her voice was barely audible. "I've never felt anything like this before, and I don't know how to be someone who gets to have something this beautiful." Ragnar covered her hand with his own, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. "Then let me show you," he said softly. "Let me show you what it's like to be loved exactly as you are." And as the sun set over Bryant Park, with the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing across the water, Selina Moore realized she was about to discover what it meant to be someone's first and last love all at once. Love means different things to different people, but for some it means finally having something worth losing. The confession hung between them like morning mist over the Hudson River, beautiful and fragile and impossible to hold on to. 2 days had passed since Bryant Park, and Selina found herself caught between the most exquisite joy she'd ever experienced and a terror so profound it made her hands shake while she worked. "You've been burning everything," Darius observed as Selina scraped another ruined sauce from the bottom of a pan. "That's the 3rd batch today. What's going on?" Selina stared at the destroyed reduction, her reflection distorted in the stainless steel. How could she explain that someone had just offered her everything she'd never dared to want, and she didn't know if she was brave enough to accept it? "I told him I needed time to think," she whispered. "Think about what? About whether I'm ready for this? About whether I deserve this?" Her voice cracked slightly. "About whether love is worth destroying the safe life I've built." Darius set down his knife and turned to face her fully. "Selina, in 3 years of friendship, I've watched you pour everything into this kitchen because you were afraid to pour it into anything else. But happiness isn't a reward you earn. It's a choice you make." Before she could respond, Chef Laurent appeared beside them. "Moore, there's a delivery for you at the front desk. Personal." Selina's heart jumped. She made her way through the dining room to find the hostess, holding an elegant black box tied with silver ribbon. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a first-edition cookbook from Julia Child, inscribed in Ragnar's careful handwriting, "For someone who creates magic every day and doesn't even know it. No pressure, just patience." Ah, her eyes filled with unexpected tears. Somehow he had understood exactly what she needed: space, time, and a reminder that he saw her dreams as clearly as she did. Across town, Ragnar sat in his office trying to focus on acquisition reports from the London property, but his mind kept drifting to the terrified vulnerability he'd seen in Selina's eyes. He had built his empire by reading people, by understanding what motivated them, what they feared. But with Selina, every instinct he'd honed over 15 years felt useless. "Sir?" Cordelia knocked softly. "Your 3 o'clock is here." "My 3 o'clock? Celia Meridian Torres? Your sister?" "She said it was urgent." Ragnar's stomach dropped. Celia only showed up unannounced when something was seriously wrong. She entered wearing her favorite leather jacket and the expression that had terrified him since childhood, the one that meant she was about to drag truth out of him, whether he wanted to share it or not. "Lydia told me about your girlfriend," she said without preamble, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Celia. She likes her. Says she's really pretty and smells like cookies and makes Uncle Ragnar smile different." Celia studied her brother with laser focus. "So what's the problem?" "There's no problem. Ragnar Meridian Torres, I've known you for 36 years. I know you're no problem face, and this isn't it." She leaned forward. "Talk to me." Ragnar was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city skyline. "I told her I was falling in love with her. And she's terrified." She asked for time to think. He ran a hand through his hair. "What if she decides I'm not worth the risk?" Celia's expression softened. "What if she decides you are?" "I don't know how to do this, Celia. I don't know how to be vulnerable with someone. I don't know how to love someone without trying to control the outcome." "Then you learn," she said simply. "The same way you learned to build hotels, to run a business, to take care of me when we were kids and had no idea what we were doing." That evening, Selina sat in her tiny Queen's apartment, Julia Child's cookbook open on her lap, when her phone rang. Ragnar's name appeared on the screen and her heart did that familiar flutter. "Thank you for the book," she said softly. "Did you read the inscription?" "About 17 times. Ragnar was quiet for a moment. "Selina, I want you to know something. What I feel for you isn't going anywhere. Whether you need 3 days or 3 months or 3 years to figure out if this is what you want, I'll wait." Her breath caught. "Why?" "Because you're the first person who's ever made me want to be patient. The first person who's made me understand that some things are worth waiting for." His voice grew softer. "And because I think you're worth everything." Selina closed her eyes, feeling tears she didn't expect. "I'm scared I don't know how to be loved." "Then let me teach you," he said gently. "Let me show you that love doesn't have to hurt, that it doesn't have to be earned or proven or perfect. What if I disappoint you? What if you don't?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. "Selina, what's the worst thing that could happen if you let yourself be happy?" She thought about it, really thought about it. What was she actually afraid of? That he would leave? That she would get hurt? That she would discover she wasn't enough? Or was she afraid of something else entirely? That she might actually deserve to be loved completely, unconditionally, exactly as she was? "I need to tell you something," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anything. You're my first love." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Not just my first serious relationship, my first everything. I've never let anyone close enough to hurt me because I was so afraid of not being enough." The silence stretched between them, and Selina's heart hammered against her ribs. Had she just ruined everything? Had she just confirmed every fear about her inexperience, her naivety, her... "Selina," Ragnar's voice was rough with emotion. "Can I come over? It's almost midnight." "I know. Can I come over anyway?" 20 minutes later, she opened her apartment door to find Ragnar standing in her narrow hallway, still wearing his work clothes but looking completely undone. Without a word, he stepped inside and pulled her into his arms. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "For what?" "For trusting me with that. For trusting me with you." And as they stood in her tiny apartment, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a shifting world, Selina realized something that made her chest ache with possibility. Maybe being someone's first love didn't make you inexperienced. Maybe it made you irreplaceable. Sometimes the hardest part of love isn't falling, it's believing you deserve to land softly. The morning light streaming through Selina's small apartment window felt different somehow, golden and warm in a way that made everything seem possible. She had fallen asleep in Ragnar's arms on her cramped couch, and waking up to find him still there, his expensive shirt wrinkled and his usually perfect hair disheveled, felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Good morning," he murmured against her temple, his voice rough with sleep. "I can't believe you stayed," she whispered. "Where else would I be?" It was such a simple question, but it made her chest tight with emotion. For 25 years, she had never been anyone's priority, never been the person someone chose to stay with when they could be anywhere else. "I have to be at work in 2 hours," she said reluctantly. "And I have a conference call with Tokyo in 1 hour," he replied. But neither of them moved to get up. They lay there in comfortable silence, watching dust motes dance in the morning light, until Ragnar's phone began buzzing insistently on the coffee table. "Cordelia," he said, after glancing at the screen. "She's probably wondering why I'm not in the office yet. You should answer it." But instead of reaching for the phone, Ragnar turned to face her fully. "Selina, what you told me last night, about being your first love, it doesn't scare me. It doesn't make me want to run or slow down or treat you like you're fragile. What does it make you want to do?" His grey eyes grew intense. "It makes me want to be worthy of that trust. It makes me want to love you so well that you never doubt your worth again." Before she could respond, his phone started ringing again. This time, Cordelia's name was accompanied by 3 urgent text messages. "You should really answer that," Selina said, sitting up. Ragnar sighed and reached for the phone. "This is Ragnar." "Sir, thank God." Cordelia's voice was tight with stress. "We have a situation. The investors from the Tokyo meeting last month, they're pulling out. They're citing concerns about management stability and requesting a meeting with you immediately." Selina watched Ragnar's expression shift from tender to business-focused in seconds. It was like watching a mask slide into place, transforming him back into the intimidating hotel magnate she'd first met. "What kind of concerns?" he asked, already moving toward the window to pace. "I don't have details yet, but Mr. Nakamura specifically mentioned wanting to discuss your recent personal associations and how they might affect the company's reputation." Selina's blood ran cold. Recent personal associations? They were talking about her. Ragnar's jaw tightened as he met her eyes. "Set up the meeting for this afternoon. And Cordelia, get me everything we have on Nakamura's background. I want to know what this is really about." He hung up and immediately turned to Selina, who was already pulling away, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. "They're talking about me," she said quietly. "Selina, they think I'm bad for your business. They think I'm bad for your reputation." Her voice was eerily calm. "And maybe they're right. Don't." Ragnar's tone was sharp. "Don't you dare let other people's narrow minds make you doubt what we have." But Selina was already retreating into herself, all the fears she'd been battling rising to the surface like oil on water. "Look around, Ragnar. Look at where we are." She gestured to her tiny apartment with its mismatched furniture and peeling paint. "This is my world. A studio apartment in Queens working 16-hour days for a fraction of what you probably spend on lunch. I don't care about any of that. But they do." She stood up, needing distance. "Your investors, your business partners, your world, they care. And eventually that's going to matter." Ragnar stood too, frustration evident in every line of his body. "So, what are you saying? That we should end this because some narrow-minded businessman can't see past their own prejudices?" "I'm saying maybe I was right to be scared." Selina's voice broke slightly. "Maybe some dreams are too big for people like me." "People like you?" Ragnar's voice was dangerous now. "You mean talented, brilliant, beautiful women who create art every day and make everyone around them better just by existing? I mean a black girl from Queens with no money, no connections, and no business being in love with a billionaire." The words came out harsh, bitter. "This isn't a fairy tale, Ragnar. This is real life, and in real life, people like me don't get happy endings with people like you." The silence that followed was deafening. Ragnar stared at her as if she'd slapped him, hurt and anger warring in his expression. "Is that really what you think?" he asked quietly. "That this is about money or status or what other people think? Isn't it?" "No." His voice was firm. "It's about 2 people who found something real in a world full of fake. It's about love, Selina. Pure, simple, complicated, terrifying love." Selina turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "I need to get ready for work." "So that's it? You're going to let them win without even fighting?" "I'm being realistic. You're being scared." Ragnar moved toward the door, then paused. "And you know what? That's okay. Be scared, but don't lie to yourself about what this is. Don't cheapen what we have by making it about money or class or other people's opinions." He reached for the door handle, then turned back one more time. "I have to deal with this business situation, but this conversation isn't over. When you're ready to stop running from the best thing that's ever happened to either of us, call me." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Selina sank onto her couch, staring at the spot where he'd been standing. The apartment felt impossibly empty without him, like all the color had drained out of the world. She picked up her phone and scrolled to her sister's number, then put it down again. How could she explain that she just pushed away the love of her life because she was too afraid to believe she deserved it? Outside her window, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Millions of people pursuing their dreams, fighting their fears, trying to believe in something bigger than themselves. And somewhere across town, in a glass tower that might as well have been on another planet, the man who loved her was preparing to fight for their future. The question was, would she be brave enough to fight alongside him, or would she let fear win before the battle even began? The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves about what we deserve. The Meridian Grand Hotel's executive boardroom had never felt more like a battleground. Ragnar sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his expression carved from stone as he faced three of his most important investors. The late afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows cast sharp shadows across their faces, making the tension in the room almost visible. "Mr. Meridian," said Hiroshi Nakamura, his voice carefully neutral, despite the ultimatum hidden beneath his words. "We appreciate you taking this meeting on such short notice." "Of course," Ragnar replied, his tone equally measured, "though I'm curious about these concerns regarding management stability that Cordelia mentioned." Nakamura exchanged glances with the other two investors, Beatrice Ashford from London and Klaus Hoffmann from Berlin. All three had been instrumental in funding Ragnar's European expansion, and all three currently held enough influence to destroy everything he'd built. "We've heard rumors," Beatrice said carefully, her British accent making each word sound like cut crystal, "about your personal life, about certain associations that might reflect poorly on the company's image." Ragnar's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I wasn't aware that my personal life was subject to board approval. When your personal life affects stock prices and investor confidence, it becomes our concern," Klaus interjected, his German directness cutting through the diplomatic language. "We've invested too much to watch it compromised by inappropriate relationships." The word inappropriate hung in the air like a poison cloud. Ragnar felt something dangerous unfurl in his chest, a protective fury he'd never experienced before. "Inappropriate how?" His voice was deadly quiet. "Come now, Ragnar." Beatrice leaned forward. "You're a public figure, the face of a luxury brand. Dating a kitchen worker from Queens sends the wrong message about the company's standards." "Our clients expect a certain level of sophistication," Nakamura added. "They expect to see leadership that reflects the exclusivity of our properties." Ragnar stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. For 15 years he had played their game, spoken their language, danced around the ugly truths that funded his empire. But not today, not when they were talking about Selena. "Let me make sure I understand," he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that had built hotels across 3 continents. "You're concerned that the woman I'm dating, a professionally trained chef who works at one of Manhattan's most respected restaurants, somehow diminishes our brand because she works for a living instead of inheriting her wealth." "It's not about her profession," Klaus said quickly. "It's about image, about the fact that she's black." Ragnar's words cut through Klaus's stammering like a blade. "Let's call it what it is, shall we?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Beatrice's face had gone pale, while Nakamura studied his hands with sudden fascination. "That's a serious accusation," Beatrice said finally. "Is it an inaccurate one?" More silence. "We're simply looking out for the company's best interests," Nakamura said eventually. "Perhaps if this relationship were more discreet." "Discreet." Ragnar repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "You want me to hide the woman I love because she doesn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable." "Love." Klaus laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. "Ragnar, you're 36 years old. Surely you understand the difference between infatuation and genuine compatibility. This girl is a phase. Don't destroy everything you've built for something temporary." Something snapped inside Ragnar's chest. In one fluid motion, he swept his files off the table, the sound of papers scattering filling the stunned silence. "Get out," he said quietly. "Ragnar," Beatrice started. "Get out." His voice filled the room like thunder. "All of you, get out of my hotel, get out of my company, and get the hell out of my life." Klaus stood abruptly. "You're making a mistake. Without our backing, the Singapore project dies. The Milan expansion dies. Everything you've worked for. Everything I've worked for means nothing if I have to destroy my soul to keep it." Ragnar's grey eyes were molten steel. "I've spent 15 years building an empire, but I've just realized something. What's the point of owning the whole world if you lose yourself in the process? 20 minutes later, Ragnar sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. The contracts for 3 major expansions lay in ruins. His stock prices would plummet by morning. The business press would have a field day with news of the investor revolt. And none of it mattered compared to the way Selina had looked at him that morning, like she believed she wasn't worth fighting for. He dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Across town, Selina stood in Lumiere's walk-in freezer, her phone clutched in her shaking hands. She'd heard it ring, twice now, but couldn't bring herself to answer. The cold air bit through her chef's whites, but she welcomed the physical discomfort. It distracted from the hollow ache in her chest. "Selina," Darius's voice came from the doorway. "Chef Laurent is looking for you, and you've been in here for 10 minutes. You're going to get hypothermia." She emerged slowly, her dark skin ashen despite the cold. "I saw the news," Darius said gently, "about the Meridian Hotel Group losing major investors. Something about a board revolt?" Selina's stomach dropped. "What news?" Darius pulled out his phone and showed her the financial website headline, "Meridian Hotel Empire in Crisis as Key Investors Withdraw Backing." Her hands trembled as she read the article. The investor meeting, the concerns about management decisions, the stock price freefall that had already begun. "Oh God," she whispered, "this is my fault. Selina, this is because of me, because of us." She sank onto a prep stool, the full weight of what loving Ragnar had cost him hitting her like a physical blow. "He's losing everything because he chose me." Her phone buzzed with a text message from Ragnar. "None of this matters without you. Please call me." But Selina was already untying her apron with numb fingers, her decision crystallizing like ice in her veins. Some love stories were too expensive. Some dreams came with a price that destroyed everyone involved. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go before you ruin their entire life. Sometimes running away feels like the most loving thing you can do, until you realize you're only breaking 2 hearts instead of 1. The Greyhound bus station in Port Authority buzzed with the chaotic energy of midnight departures and desperate escapes. Selina sat in a hard plastic chair, clutching a one-way ticket to Atlanta and a duffel bag containing everything she owned that mattered. Her knife roll lay across her lap like a security blanket, the weight of it both comforting and heartbreaking. She had left Lumiere 3 hours ago without explanation, simply hanging up her apron and walking out into the cold November night. Chef Laurent would be furious, Darius would be confused, but staying felt impossible when every breath in New York carried the weight of what she had cost the man she loved. Her phone had been buzzing constantly for the past 4 hours, 23 missed calls from Ragnar, 12 from an unknown number that might be his office, and 17 text messages she couldn't bring herself to read. Each notification felt like a knife twisting in her chest. "Now boarding bus 1247 to Atlanta," the tinny voice announced over the intercom. Selina stood on unsteady legs, shouldering her bag and joining the line of night travelers, people fleeing something, seeking something, running toward or away from the lives they'd built. She recognized the look in their eyes because she saw it in her own reflection in the bus station windows. "Selina!" The voice cut through the noise like a gunshot. She spun around to find Celia pushing through the crowd, her dark hair disheveled and her eyes wild with urgency. "Thank God I found you," Celia gasped, slightly out of breath. "I've been checking every bus station in the city. How did you—" "Darius, he called Ragnar when you disappeared from work. Ragnar called me practically incoherent." Celia stepped closer, her expression desperate. "Selina, please don't get on that bus." "I have to." Selina's voice was barely audible over the station noise. "You don't understand what I've done to him. His investors, his business, everything he worked for is falling apart because of me." "Is that what you think this is about?" Celia's voice rose. "Money, business deals. It's about reality." Selina shot back, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. "Your brother built an empire and I destroyed it in 3 months. Those investors were right. I don't belong in his world." Celia stared at her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She laughed, not with humor, but with the bitter recognition of someone who understood a particular kind of pain. "Do you want to know what Ragnar was like before you?" Celia asked quietly. "Celia, he was empty, successful, powerful, respected, and completely empty." Celia's eyes filled with tears. "Do you know that in 15 years, I never once saw my brother laugh? Real laughter, not the polite sounds he made at business dinners. I never saw him care about anything beyond profit margins and expansion plans. Final boarding call for bus 1247 to Atlanta. I need to go, Selina whispered. 3 weeks ago, Lydia asked me why Uncle Ragnar was suddenly all smiley and weird, Celia continued, ignoring the boarding call, and I realized I'd never seen him truly happy before. Not once, not until you. Selina's resolve wavered, but the guilt was too strong. That doesn't change what I've cost him. What you've cost him? Celia stepped closer, her voice intense. Selina, do you know what he said when he called me tonight? He said, I finally understand what's worth losing everything for. He said, you taught him the difference between having a life and living one. The words hit Selina like a physical blow. She gripped her bag tighter, using it as an anchor against the tide of emotion threatening to pull her under. Those investors, their money is replaceable, Celia continued. Business deals come and go, but what you two have, that's once in a lifetime, and you're about to throw it away because you're too scared to believe you deserve it. You don't understand. I understand better than you think. Celia's voice grew soft but firm. I understand what it's like to believe that love is something that happens to other people. I understand thinking you're not enough, not worthy, not the right fit for someone's life. She paused, studying Selina's face. But I also understand what it's like to almost lose the most important person in your world because you were too afraid to fight for them. And I understand the regret that follows you for the rest of your life if you let fear win. Last call for bus 1247 to Atlanta. All passengers must board immediately. Selina looked at the bus, then back at Celia. What if they're right? What if I really am wrong for him? What if you're exactly right for him? Celia countered. What if you're the person who saves him from becoming someone he never wanted to be? Around them, the last few passengers hurried toward the bus. The driver was checking his watch, preparing to close the doors. He's at the hotel, Celia said quietly. 42nd floor. He's been there all night, staring out the window like he's looking for something he'll never find again. Selina's heart clenched. What if I go to him and it's not enough? What if the damage is already done? What if it's not? Celia's voice was gentle now. What if love really is strong enough to rebuild what fear tried to destroy? The bus doors hissed shut with a finality that echoed through the station. Selina watched it pull away, carrying other people toward other chances, other lives, other possibilities. She stood there for a long moment, her ticket crumpled in her shaking hand, feeling the weight of the choice that would define the rest of her life. Celia, she said finally, her voice thick with tears and hope and terror. Yeah? Do you think love is worth losing everything for? Celia smiled through her own tears. I think love is worth finding everything you never knew you needed. Selina dropped her bus ticket into a nearby trash can and shouldered her bag with new determination. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't running away from love, it's running toward it, even when the entire world tells you you're not supposed to. Love isn't about perfect timing, it's about choosing each other even when the world is falling apart. The elevator to the 42nd floor of the Meridian Grand Hotel had never felt slower. Selina watched the numbers climb, 38, 39, 40, her heart hammering against her ribs with each passing floor. Her duffel bag felt heavier with each second, weighted with all the words she needed to say, and the fear that she might be too late. At 42, the doors opened with a soft chime that sounded like destiny calling. The executive floor was eerily quiet at 2 in the morning, lit only by emergency lighting and the glow from the city below. Selina's footsteps echoed on the marble as she approached the corner office where light spilled from beneath the door. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. Through the glass wall she could see Ragnar's silhouette against the floor-to-ceiling windows. He stood perfectly still, like a statue carved from shadow and moonlight, staring out at the city that had brought them together and nearly torn them apart. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. Go away, Cordelia. His voice came through the door, rough with exhaustion and pain. I told you I need to be alone. It's not Cordelia, Selina said quietly. The silence that followed stretched like an eternity. Then she heard footsteps, quick, urgent, and the door flew open. Ragnar stood there in the doorway, his usually immaculate appearance completely undone. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie discarded somewhere, his dark hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it for hours. But it was his eyes that broke her heart, red-rimmed and filled with a desperate hope he was trying not to feel. Selina, he breathed, her name like a prayer on his lips. I was about to get on a bus to Atlanta, she said, the words tumbling out before she lost her nerve. Something flickered across his face, pain, fear, understanding. What stopped you? Your sister. She found me at Port Authority and told me something I needed to hear. Ragnar stepped aside, and she entered his office. The space was magnificent, all glass and steel and power, but somehow it felt intimate with just the two of them there in the middle of the night. What did she tell you? He asked, closing the door behind her. Selina set down her bag and turned to face him. She told me that you said you finally understood what was worth losing everything for. Ragnar's jaw tightened. I meant it. Your business is just business. He moved closer, his grey eyes intense. Buildings, contracts, money. None of it means anything without someone to share it with. But the investors, the expansion plans, will be replaced by different investors and different plans. He reached out slowly, as if afraid she might disappear, and touched her face gently. But you, Selina Moore, are irreplaceable. Tears she'd been holding back for hours finally spilled over. I was so scared. When I saw the news about the stock prices, about everything falling apart, I thought, you thought you were the problem. Ragnar's thumb brushed away her tears. But you're not the problem, love. You're the solution to a life I didn't even know was broken. How can you say that? You lost millions because of me. I found everything because of you. His voice was fierce now, passionate. Do you know what my life was like before that night in the Aspen room? I had money, success, respect, and I was slowly dying inside. I was becoming exactly the kind of man I used to despise. He cupped her face in both hands now, forcing her to meet his eyes. You saved me, Selina. You reminded me what it felt like to want something more than profit margins. You showed me that love, real love, is worth any price. But what about? No. His voice was gentle but firm. No more, what about? No more fear, no more running, no more believing other people's lies about what we're worth. He paused, his eyes searching hers. I love you, not despite our differences, but because of them. Not despite the challenges, but because they make us stronger together. Selina felt the last of her walls crumbling. I love you too, she whispered. God, Ragnar, I love you so much it terrifies me. Then marry me. The words hung in the air between them like stars, suddenly visible after a storm. What? She breathed. Marry me, he repeated, sinking to one knee right there in his office. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this, but I can't wait another second to ask you to be my wife. Selina's hands flew to her mouth. Ragnar, I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other for 2 months, but I also know that some souls recognize each other instantly, and mine has been looking for yours my entire life. His voice broke slightly. Marry me, Selina. Let me love you for the rest of our lives. Let me show you every day that you are worth everything. She stared down at him, this powerful man kneeling on the floor of his ruined empire, offering her his heart and his future, with nothing but love to back up his promises. You're right, she said softly. About what? It is crazy. She sank to her knees in front of him, bringing them to eye level. But you know what's even crazier? Spending the rest of my life wondering what if because I was too scared to say yes to the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me. Hope blazed in his eyes. Is that a yes? Selina smiled through her tears, feeling lighter than air and more grounded than she'd ever been in her life. That's a yes. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and setting sail all at once, like finding the missing piece of herself she hadn't known was lost, like the beginning of everything that mattered. Outside the windows, New York City sparkled with possibility, and somewhere in the distance, the sun was beginning to rise on a new day, a day when two hearts that had almost given up on love decided to bet everything on forever. True love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding someone perfect for you and choosing them every day for the rest of your life. 6 months later, the rooftop garden of the Meridian Grand Hotel had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. String lights twinkled like captured stars against the Manhattan skyline, and white roses cascaded from every surface, their perfume mixing with the warm June air. The setting was intimate, only 50 guests scattered among elegant round tables, each one representing a piece of the life Selina and Ragnar had built together. Selina stood before a full-length mirror in the hotel's bridal suite, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at her. The dress was simple but stunning, ivory silk that flowed like water over her curves, with delicate beading that caught the light when she moved. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo that showcased the pearl earrings that had belonged to Ragnar's mother. You look absolutely radiant, Keisha said from behind her, adjusting the cathedral-length veil with gentle hands. Selina's sister had flown in from Atlanta the week before, and seeing her family together with Ragnar's had felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. "I can't believe this is real," Selina whispered, touching the simple diamond solitaire on her finger, the ring Ragnar had surprised her with 3 days after his impromptu proposal, claiming he needed something worthy of the moment that changed his life. "Believe it, sis," Keisha grinned. "That man out there is completely gone for you. Has been since day one." A soft knock at the door interrupted them, and Celia peeked her head in. "The groom is getting antsy downstairs. Says he's been waiting 26 years to marry his best friend and doesn't want to wait another minute." Selina laughed, the sound bright and free. "Tell him good things come to those who wait." "Actually," Celia stepped fully into the room, her own bridesmaid dress a soft blush pink that complemented her olive skin, "he wanted me to give you this." She handed Selina a small envelope with her name written in Ragnar's careful script. Inside was a single sheet of hotel stationery with a message that made her eyes fill with happy tears. "My darling Selina, by the time you read this, we'll be minutes away from becoming husband and wife. I wanted you to know that every choice I've made in the last 6 months, rebuilding the business with new partners who share our values, creating a foundation to support young chefs like yourself, learning to put love before profit, has been easy because I was making them with you. You asked me once what I wanted. I want forever with you. I want to watch you conquer the culinary world. I want to hold your hand when we're 90. I want to love you so completely that our children never doubt what real love looks like. Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth losing everything for, and that love isn't something to be earned. It's something to be celebrated. See you at the altar, my love. Forever yours, Ragnar." "He really said all that?" Keisha asked, reading over her shoulder. "He really means all of it," Celia confirmed. "You should see the foundation documents, the Selina Moore Culinary Scholarship Program. He's funding full rides to culinary school for 50 students a year." Selina's heart swelled with so much love, she thought it might burst. 6 months ago, she had believed she was too small for his world. Now she understood that love didn't make you smaller or larger. It made you exactly who you were meant to be. "Ready?" Keisha asked, offering her arm. "Ready," Selina said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt like floating. When the doors opened, revealing the garden paradise Ragnar had created for their day, Selina gasped. Every detail was perfect, from the jazz quartet playing their song to the way the late afternoon sun painted everything golden. But none of it mattered when she saw him. Ragnar stood at the end of the white silk runner wearing a charcoal grey tuxedo that made his silver eyes appear almost luminous. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but she could see the slight tremor in his hands that meant he was as overwhelmed as she was. When their eyes met across the garden, everything else faded away. The guests, the photographer, the strings quartet, none of it existed except the man who had taught her that love wasn't about being worthy enough, but about being brave enough. She walked toward him slowly, savoring every step, every breath, every heartbeat that brought her closer to their forever. Halfway down the aisle, she saw him mouth the words, "You're beautiful," and she smiled so widely her cheeks hurt. When she reached him, he took her hands in his thumb brushing over her engagement ring, the same gesture he'd made every day for 6 months, as if he still couldn't believe she was real. "Hi," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Hi yourself," she whispered back. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of I do's and forevers, and promises that felt as natural as breathing. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ragnar cupped her face gently and kissed her with such tenderness that half the guests were openly crying. "Mrs. Meridian," he murmured against her lips. "I like the sound of that," she laughed through her happy tears. Later, as they swayed together during their first dance to Etta James's At Last, Selina looked around at their guests, Darius and the crew from Lumiere, Imara and Cordelia from the hotel, little Lydia spinning in her flower girl dress, Keisha dancing with one of Ragnar's business associates who had flown in from London. "What are you thinking about?" Ragnar asked, following her gaze. "About how 6 months ago I thought loving you meant I had to choose between my dreams and yours," she said softly. "But look at us now. You're building hotels with sustainable practices and worker equity programs. I'm opening my own restaurant next month with your full support. We didn't have to give up who we were. We just became better versions of ourselves. You know what the best part is?" Ragnar spun her gently, bringing her back into his arms. "What?" "This is just the beginning," he said, his eyes full of promises and possibilities. "We have 60 years of love ahead of us. 60 years of adventures and challenges and everyday magic. You think we'll make it that long? She teased. I think, he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead, that some love stories are written in the stars. And ours? Ours is going to burn bright enough to light up the whole universe. As the sun set over Manhattan and the city lights began to twinkle like earthbound stars, Selina Moore Meridian danced with her husband and knew with absolute certainty that she had found her forever. Because sometimes, when you're brave enough to love completely, the universe rewards you with everything you never dared to dream. The end 5 years later. Love doesn't end with I do. It begins there, growing deeper with each shared sunrise, each conquered fear, each moment you choose each other all over again. The kitchen of Moore's table hummed with the controlled chaos that Selina had come to love more than anything, except perhaps the man who had made it all possible. Steam rose from copper pots, while her team of 12 moved with the precision of a symphony orchestra, each chef trained not just in technique, but in the philosophy that had become the restaurant's heartbeat. Food is love made visible. Chef Meridian, the James Beard Foundation just called, announced Zara, her sous chef, a brilliant young woman from Brooklyn who reminded Selina of herself 5 years ago. They want to confirm your attendance at next month's awards ceremony. Selina paused in her plating, still not entirely used to being nominated for Outstanding Chef in America. Tell them yes, and make sure the entire team gets tickets. We're all going. Through the kitchen's pass-through window, she could see the dining room of her restaurant. Their restaurant, really, since Ragnar had insisted his name stay off everything, while his support made everything possible. The space was warm and elegant without being intimidating, filled with couples celebrating anniversaries, families sharing Sunday dinner, business meetings that felt more like friendships. This was what she had dreamed of during those long nights in Queens, a place where food brought people together, where every dish told a story, where love was the secret ingredient in everything they served. "Behind you, chef," called Darius, now her executive sous chef and business partner. He balanced a tray of their signature dessert, chocolate soufflé with Madagascar vanilla, the same dish that had brought her and Ragnar together 5 years ago. "How many tonight?" Selina asked. 47 soufflés. That couple at table 12 ordered one for every year they've been married." Darius grinned. Ragnar's romantic influence is spreading through the city. As if summoned by his name, Ragnar appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing his suit from whatever board meeting had consumed his afternoon. But his tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and his eyes held that soft expression they got whenever he watched her work. "How's my favorite chef?" he asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "Your only chef," she laughed, leaning into his embrace. "How was the Singapore meeting?" "Successful. The new hotel will have the most comprehensive worker equality program in Asia. Turns out your influence on my business practices is becoming my competitive advantage." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Ready to go home? 5 more minutes. I want to check on—" "Chef?" Zara approached with a shy smile. "The couple at table 8 asked if they could meet you. It's their first anniversary, and they said they got engaged here last year after trying your tasting menu." Selina's heart swelled. This never got old, knowing that her food had been part of someone's love story. 20 minutes later, they walked hand in hand through Central Park toward their townhouse on the Upper East Side. The October air was crisp with the promise of winter, and the trees overhead painted the sidewalk with gold and crimson shadows. "I have something to tell you," Selina said as they paused by the fountain where Ragnar had proposed properly, 6 months after that spontaneous moment in his office, this time with a ring, planned speeches, and her entire family watching. "Good news or bad news?" he asked, though his smile suggested he already suspected. "Depends on how you feel about sleepless nights and diaper changes." Ragnar stopped walking entirely, his grey eyes going wide. "Selina, we're going to have a baby," she whispered, watching joy explode across his face like sunrise. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around right there in the middle of the park while she laughed with pure happiness. When he set her down, his hands immediately went to her still flat stomach. "How long have you known?" 3 days. I wanted to be sure before I told you." She covered his hands with hers. "Are you ready to be a dad?" "I've been ready since the moment I met you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Ready to build a life, a family, a legacy of love that lasts generations." They walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, both lost in dreams of the future they were building together. Their townhouse glowed with warm light, every window a promise of the life they had created, not despite their differences, but because of them. Later that night, as they lay in bed with Selena curled against Ragnar's chest, she thought about the terrified young woman who had almost gotten on a bus to Atlanta 5 years ago. That woman could never have imagined this. The successful restaurant, the loving marriage, the baby on the way, the profound sense of belonging that came from being loved exactly as she was. "What are you thinking about?" Ragnar murmured sleepily, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her shoulder. "About how you were right," she said softly. "About what?" "About some love stories being written in the stars." She tilted her head to look at him in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom window. "About us burning bright enough to light up the universe." "We're just getting started, Mrs. Meridian," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Just getting started." Outside their window, the city hummed with 8 million other love stories, some beginning, some ending, some finding their way through the messy middle. But this one, this love that had survived prejudice and fear and the weight of other people's expectations, this love that had grown stronger with each challenge, this love was forever. Because when two hearts choose each other completely, when they build something beautiful from nothing but faith and determination, when they refuse to let the world dim their light, that's when ordinary people become extraordinary and love stories become legends. What touched you most about Selena and Ragnar's journey? Do you believe that love really can conquer all obstacles when two people are truly committed to each other? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.